So, Joseph, first thing I wanted to get into is how'd you get into the paid contracting business and why'd you get into that?
Paint contracting. Okay. Well, I got into paint contracting because I was a hoodlum of a kid. I didn't have a job. I was 3 months behind on my rent.
Mhm.
I was hiding from my landlord. I mean, I was broke, be broke, and I didn't have a whole lot of motivation at the time. But my soon-to-be brother-in-law was working for a paint contractor here in the Oklahoma City metro area, and he offered me a job, $5 an hour. Uh, I didn't have a job, and I needed money really
Mhm.
bad. So I took the job with the expectation of being in the space for about 3 weeks.
Mhm.
I had an uncle. I still have the uncle, but that uncle had a job lined up for me for $3 more an hour, $8 an hour. We're talking 1990. I want to say 1995, maybe 1996.
Mhm.
I think it was 95. Summer of 95 is when it was. Um, that was $8 an hour was a lot of money because
Mhm.
minimum wage was like four and a quarter or 4.15 at the time. So it was almost double minimum wage. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go kill bugs for $8 an hour, right?
Great.
Uh, Thankfully, that job fell through flat on its face, and I stayed with the same paint contracting company. Started at the very, very bottom as someone who had never had any construction experience at all. All my previous jobs had been retail or making pizza, the kind of stuff you have as a teenager, right?
Yep.
And I found a career. I found out that I was pretty good at it, and I enjoyed creating something,
Mhm.
having something to look at when I was done. Because my first job worked for Little Caesars. When I'd make a pizza, it went out the door, somebody ate it. The only time I got excited is when I made my own to take it home.
Mhm.
Or I worked for a grocery store chain, and I mean, not a whole lot of fulfillment. It's just do the task and go on.
Menial
But I would
task.
paint somebody's house and they live in it for years with this beautiful art. And I actually got really, really interested in a lot of the Trompe l'oeil style, like faux finishes. That became kind of my specialty when I was still really hands on with it. And yeah, it brought out a side of me I didn't even know I had. And I got all those bills paid that landlord all the way up. I didn't bail on him like everybody else does at that age. And then they kicked me out and sold the house. So,
Mhm. Awesome. Great to hear. So, two quick notes on that from personal experience. So, I used to actually work at an Olive Garden. I wasn't tossing pizzas, but can definitely uh, relate to your experience in the sense that it was just kind of a menial job and just sometimes something you have to do and definitely wasn't one of those things you enjoy, but so it can really resonate with that, and I'm sure other people who work in the restaurant industry or just pizza shops can speak to that or resonate with that as well. But another follow-up question I had on that, so you mentioned that you grew up kind of hoodlum. Can we just use that as troubled child for simple terms out
yeah,
there?
yeah, that's easy. Yeah, troubled child is that's what I was. I was a mess, and it was my fault. So
No, no worries. Look, so what I actually wanted to get into, it's great you brought that up. A lot of people out there, I think, especially growing up, appear troubled, or people may look at them as troubled. But do you think that a lot of these troubled kids are just, part of it may be their fault, but part of it maybe they just be misunderstood, and they can be really great at something and build a career if just they got the opportunity to monetize some of their passion or something they want to do. Does that sound accurate?
oh, absolutely. I'm a parent. I have 5 kids. Okay,
Oh,
I have 3 adult daughters, an adult son, and one teenage son that's left at home. And I see out of them all the time unexpected results. They have passions, and they have paths available to them that even I didn't at their age. And I find myself as a parent sometimes kind of hitting that wall uh, of uh, of wanting them to take the traditional route.
mhm.
But the more I think about it, I realize that they're learning, they're in process just the same way I was. That gives me a lot of hope that I really, I had a lot going on. I wouldn't say that I was misunderstood. I would say a lot of kids are, without a doubt. I really just was a mess. I just wanted to do everything that I wanted to do with no consequences and with no oversight. That
Mhm.
that I'd love to be able to blame that on just being misunderstood. That would be great. But no, I sat down at 19 years old and wrote an 8-page letter to my stepmom for how bad I treated her throughout my teenage years.
Mhm.
So if that gives you an idea, I was. But yeah, absolutely. I think we've got this little box that we try to put young people into all the time
For
and
sure.
say, this is your way to succeed. This is your way to live. And the possibilities are endless, especially today, especially with the internet. There's so much opportunity that wasn't there when I was young. So
For sure. No, I really appreciate bringing that up. I think a lot of times it could go both ways. I think maybe sometimes people just mature at a slower rate, but at the same time, I think there may be societal pressures on folks who kind of to take those more traditional paths. But realistically, if those kids were a little more understood or kind of given a chance, maybe they could definitely advance further. So I think we can both resonate on that point. Really insightful there. On a
yeah,
similar note,
definitely.
yep. On a similar note, you said when you were younger, you started just working at a low level in the paint contracting business. So to get a little
Hmm.
more specific on there, would love to know what decisions you made kind of when you first started that really helped propel you to kind of running that business and ultimately kind of selling it after a few years at a much better
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the company that I eventually ended up owning, I had a minority stake. There were three of us. We had one majority owner and two minority owners. Was the same company that I started with at $5 an hour in 1995. Um, I somewhere in the first few months, I was just really motivated to keep the job to pay the bills. Okay,
Mhm.
because I was a young man. I already had at the time I had one kid. I just had one of my daughters. My first daughter was born, so I'm a young teenage dad, and
Mhm.
my whole um, my whole purpose was just to make sure I got enough money to pay that rent, right? But I learned through that. I started paying attention to the process, to the specific steps it took to do every avenue of the job. I paid attention, and I absorbed pretty well. I'm a pretty good learner, which had a lot to do with why I was kind of a wild youth, because I
Mhm.
was bored in school. I could easily go in and test out of school all the time. I didn't have to go study and do homework and things like that. It was kind of boring, um, but I have the ability to learn really easy. So
Mhm.
I picked it up very quickly. Found out that I had some skill and some talent um, at actually doing the job. So I started moving up the ranks, and then I asked. I bugged my boss. I said, "You got to give me a shot," you know, because I saw that the guys that were doing the painting instead of the prepping were making more money and they had more responsibility. Well, I want that because I want more money. I don't just want to struggle.
Mhm.
So I ended up with a what you call a lead position. So it's the second guy on a crew. He kind of runs all the guys while the lead painter is involved in painting things,
Got it.
and applying paint. So he can concentrate on that. So I got one of those positions after about a year working with the company. And then I think opportunity, I think we were expanding so quickly because when I started with the company, there were 25 employees. When I sold my stake in the company, we had 125 crews, so it was about 150. Um,
Incredible.
about 145 real employees and five fake ones, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. um, but we were expanding so quickly that we needed a lead,
Mhm.
and I was willing. Willing is usually the best word. People are so afraid to take on something they haven't done before that they miss out on opportunity,
Mhm.
and that is one thing that I'm very bought all the way into. That if opportunity presents itself, jump on it. What's the
Mhm.
worst thing that happens? You fail. If you fail, you learn. So you might as well jump on it. So I did.
Mhm.
I got a lead position. I worked in that spot for a few years. I went from running one job to running two crews to running three crews. Now I was managing three leads, and then I had the opportunity to buy into the company,
Mhm.
and we were exploding. This is 2000 and between 2005 and 2008.
Mhm.
2006, 2007, and 2008, we painted 15% of all the new homes painted in the Oklahoma City metro area.
Mhm.
That's a 1.1 million um, person metro. So you can imagine in that heyday when they were giving houses away like bubble gum,
Yep.
a little before you were in the market, which is good. You don't ever want to see that in real time
Yes.
because it crashed our whole economy. But yeah, we were painting a bunch. So I'm doing one of these. I thought I was just, I was in my mid 20s by then, mid to late 20s, late 20s, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about business. I did. And I found out in 2008, like so many people did, that none of us knew a thing.
Hmm.
The economy is way bigger than we are. So
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that.
Got it. No, no worries. Appreciate that. I mean, I'm sure it's great you brought up actually the recession, because another thing that I wanted to get into, I'm sure the way you're describing it right now, you were kind of a troubled child on your way up in the painting company in a metro area, practically when they were giving houses away. It seems like
Mm-hmm.
a long time ago, even though right now we're seeing also similar unfortunate economic circumstances. Then you went on the
Oh,
down.
yes.
So on that note, I'm sure that wasn't your only one, but probably one of the major ones, considering that kind of painting and building houses are really complementary businesses. So when you had that setback, what do you think, or what kind of steps do you think you took to really stay disciplined and really kind of bounce back even stronger despite these circumstances or economic circumstances that you couldn't control at the time?
Mm-hmm. So in that time, so I've owned two paint contracting companies in the time. I don't know if I've mentioned that. One that I sold this last year, which was a much better situation. And my first paint contracting company that I sold my stake in, that company is still in existence today. It's much smaller. It's like 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really ever bounce back from that. But one of the things I was really fortunate with is I was cash flow positive. I had cash,
Mm-hmm.
so when it came time to sell at a steep loss, I was able to sell without any debt. I was able to exit that business at the right time. I was very fortunate. I didn't walk away with a big nest egg, but I also didn't walk away in bankruptcy or with debt and leaving people hanging owed money.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first piece of advice: is when you're when you're doing great, sock some away.
Mm-hmm.
Don't spend it all. Don't plan on the great times lasting forever, because they don't. That's when I say I knew everything about business, that's probably the number one lesson that I learned,
Mm-hmm.
is that if you have ups, you're inevitably going to have downs. There,
Mm-hmm.
it's the nature of the world. It's the nature of business. So uh, I didn't know that at the time. I only knew up. I
Mm-hmm.
knew growth from 25 people to 150 people, and revenues from, $1.5 million a year to $10 million a year. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't know why everybody doesn't own a business. I
Mm-hmm.
found out why. So, um, yeah, that's the number one lesson I learned. Throughout the process, the other lesson I learned is that the most valuable asset you have is your people, is who surrounds you,
Mm-hmm.
not their skill set, the person themselves, their buy-in, their ethics, and things like that. One of the problems that I had during that time with that paint contracting company that I wasn't aware of is, like I said, I had 5 fictitious employees.
Mm-hmm.
So we had expanded so quickly, we didn't have a strong management structure to oversee all this added growth.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of trust, and we had a few bad eggs that exploited the system, and they made some extra cash. Uh, Short term, it did hurt your heart. Did it damage the business in a major way? No, it wasn't enough money to do that. But I learned trust but verify, and really vet the people's their character.
Mm-hmm.
You can teach people skills. I didn't know how to paint a thing when I first started painting houses. Today, I could paint anything in the world, but you couldn't teach me to be an ethical person.
Mm-hmm.
I either am or I'm not. I make those choices, right? So I always I would look for the best in people that were not showing me any best,
Mm-hmm.
and I've become much more pragmatic about that, I guess. So.
Got it. No, it's a fair way of looking at it. I also point to bring up. So a lot of times, companies these days, especially I'm sure you'll see on LinkedIn, it seems like there's new job descriptions or new jobs every day, despite kind of the rippling effects of interest rates right now. But a lot of times, you'll see an endless list of qualifications, objectives, things people have to do on jobs. And it's interesting because your approach is someone who's been there and has succeeded in growing, scaling, and ultimately selling a business. You're like, screw that. I just want to hire someone that has like a get stuff done attitude. I can teach them all that. So why do you think right now people are kind of these big organizations have a convoluted or reverse mindset or reverse kind of job hunting process than you do?
I think there's I think there's a barrier that a lot of corporate America can cross if they're not careful, where they turn their employees into a commodity. They're a person with a skill set that achieves a goal, achieves a task
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't take into account any of the intangibles of a person that can really make or break your business. You know, you can get the same number of people with the same skill set together to do the same job, but if they have a toxic culture, a toxic environment, that business is going to fail. Get the exact same people with a great culture doing the same job and they'll succeed. It's that important. The people are that important. So
Awesome. No, appreciate it. I think maybe a lot of these big corporate companies, 500 plus employees, if they took notes, maybe they would improve their operations. But corporate America, as we both know, doesn't have isn't is
no,
not.
it's a pretty slow slog.
Yep, maybe they'll catch up. But no, awesome. Really
Yeah.
appreciate that. So to get into another point, from your paint contracting business, after you sold it, you kind of reinvented yourself into this digital marketer, and now working at Hite Digital as co-founder. So would love to know the process, or kind of the high level process of selling the paint company to reinventing yourself, working in marketing, which I'm sure is somewhat related, but low levelly seems like a completely different industry.
Yes. Yeah, it absolutely does. So my path in between my paint contracting company, when I sold, I needed to replace. I couldn't go back to the beginning. I couldn't go back to a $5 an hour gig somewhere because now I've got kids, I've got obligations. All of my personal
Mm-hmm.
financial obligations were still there. So I definitely needed something that would pay a little bit better, right? I had the opportunity, actually went into the oil field for a little while. First, I started at the bottom in the oil field, but the bottom in the oil field paid a lot more. So it still kind of sufficed.
Mm-hmm.
Became very good at that. Started an oil field consulting company doing well testing and what they call lease operating. So operating finished wells, going out and getting numbers every day, making obscene amounts of money. The oil field, when it's up, is obscene amounts of money, and when it's down, nobody eats. It's that kind of a business. So if any of your listeners are considering going into that business, sock as much money as you can. When it's
Yep.
good, it's great. When it's bad, you don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But while in that role, I met my now wife, Amy, my co-founder for Hite Digital here. And we started dating, and we realized very quickly that our relationship was going to be very hard, because I was out of town a lot running my business. Most of my work was in West Texas, and she was here in the Oklahoma City metro area. So we did a lot on, this is pre-COVID, so we did a lot on Facebook video. Zoom hadn't really blown up yet, and we we had one of those video relationships that we really struggled with. And we started to have the conversations of how to bring me home, because money's great. We were very fortunate to make plenty of that, but it wasn't fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
We considered starting half a dozen different types of businesses here in Oklahoma. There were opportunities. We ultimately landed on digital marketing because we got into a conversation one night, and I just happened to mention, you know who I've paid a lot of money to with really bad results? Digital marketers. I did. I had paid for SEO and websites and ads with very, very lackluster results. I had been taken advantage of because I was ignorant of the space. I learned a lot in that space because, of course, fired those digital marketers and went back to marketing for ourselves, like a lot of companies do. And we knew that we could do the ethical part better. We could
Mm-hmm.
learn the task of how to market, how to digitally market, how to do all the technical stuff. But again, you can't make a company ethical that's not. So we started with the commitment of doing things better.
Mm-hmm.
And our first business, our first digital marketing business, we started an independent agency called New Leaf Marketing. And that agency, we had a little bit different approach. We did just straight lead generation. So we built websites that we owned. We would rank those websites with search engine optimization, which is where we kind of trial by fire learned the ins and outs of basic SEO.
Mm-hmm.
We've since learned a lot more, but this was our kind of our toe in the water.
Yeah.
Uh, and we had success with it. We built these websites, and then we would sell the leads to local contractors. So we were like Angie's List or Home Advisor or something like that, but in the local space and exclusive. So one trade, one contractor, rather than selling the same lead like a lot of those companies do to 6 or 8 contractors, and then they go race each other to the bottom. We felt that we were doing it in a more ethical way,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really successful. That's actually where I started my second paint contracting company, completely by accident. I almost tripped and fell into that,
That's the best thing.
which I'll yeah, I know. And it was a blast. It was really, really a lot of fun, but it wasn't something I ever expected to do because of course I was still reeling after 2008. That leaves some scars when you go through an economic downturn and you get hurt and you get kind of smacked back into reality. Sometimes you don't want to dip your toe back in the water, but thankfully Amy was she was very encouraging. She started working while I was still running my oil field consulting company. She started learning SEO, started building these websites. And when New Leaf Marketing blew up, I was able to shut down my oil field consulting company and come home and help her. Started part-time and then became full-time. And then I started running a paint company here in the Oklahoma City metro area. My second paint contracting company. I actually fell into my second paint contracting company because my little brother, he was working a dead-end job that I just couldn't let him continue in. He wasn't making very much money, but he had really good painting skills. I thought I would start a tiny paint contracting company just so that he would have enough work to keep himself busy, make better money, and kind of have a better lifestyle. He's 1 year younger than I am. And when we were those young hoodlum kids, we were like this all the time. But today, we aren't that. So if there's hope, if any of your listeners are ever having problems with their siblings, just there's lots of time out in front of you. You could reconcile. I don't know, but we've become very close because of that. So I started this tiny little paint contracting company, but I'm the kind of guy that can't say no when I see money dangled out in front of me, especially that I know I can fulfill for. So I grew that paint contracting company from just him to 4 crews, 4-man crews, so 16 people, and then sold it to a subcontractor this last year.
Awesome.
It was the perfect marriage when selling that business because he had a great process, had great people. He was able to expand and handle the work. He just didn't have a good way to market himself. I had the brand, I had the website, I had all the socials and all the things to drive leads to his business so he could concentrate on just doing the work and running his business. And he's been super successful with it since. That allowed me to focus full-time on Hite because in the middle of that process, we merged New Leaf Marketing with Hite Digital, which is the first of its kind and only that I know of its kind digital marketing franchise in the world. There are 24 locations here in the US, and we use a communal fulfillment team in Managua, Nicaragua, where we're at a lot. In case you can't see the sign over my head here, that's why the Nicaragua shirt's back there. That's where our second family is of 200 plus employees. They're more family than they are employees. It's ridiculous how good it is. So, that's where we're at now.
Got it. Great to hear. Quick note before I move on to the next point. I think a lot of times when we treat people more like, or officially titled employees more like family, they tend to, the business grows a lot more. And I think aside from the money, people just tend to be in much better moods. So I can definitely resonate with that point as well.
Oh man, culture is everything. The way you treat people, it means the difference between success and failure in life. Every successful person that I've been around, bar none, treats the people around them like royalty. They really are service oriented to their team and to their clients and to the people they interact with. And I've taken that lesson. It took me a while. That wasn't an early on lesson, but especially the last decade, I've learned that's much more important than just about anything else you can do.
Got it. It's a really interesting point because I think a lot of times growing up, assuming we had some relatively similar lessons taught to us as we were growing up. Everyone's always taught you have to be the best, you have to be number one, even if it means maybe stepping on people. But unfortunately, but as you grow older, I think people become more successful and hopefully have this character shift that the real way to be successful in business is, yes, everyone still needs to work really hard, but you help people out. You don't focus on putting people down. If you help people
Hmm.
out, add a lot of value, and in a weird way, don't focus on the money, then stuff will flow to you in a great way. So
That's the best line. Don't
yeah.
focus on the money.
Mhm.
Don't. That doesn't mean you don't want money or don't need money.
Totally.
Money's currency. It flows. It's always flowing somewhere. And if you're that person, if you're giving that kind of value where you're working hard and doing the task, but you're somebody can rely on all the time.
Mhm.
That money just naturally flows your way. That's the easy part. And that's the lie. That's the lie that everyone's told early on. So,
Right. You have to focus on the money, not the value. But
yeah, just the money, not the value. So,
great value, money comes along. I think it's one of the great oxymorons, but maybe a lot of the big successful business folks, something they speak in their informal conversation. So happy we're,
mm-hmm.
we're discussing it here now. But really appreciate the insight around that. Another thing I wanted to ask about Hite Digital, I really appreciate you giving a description of what the company's up to. I would love to know more in depth what your role is there and kind of where you see your role expanding in the future.
Sure, absolutely. So here at Hite Digital Norman, we've got, which we own the Norman franchise here. Um, I handle operations. So if you can picture me as the tip of the spear that's running our team day to day on operations management, I am coordinating across all of our clientele to make sure that everything that we're supposed to be doing for them is happening, and it's happening in a timely manner and in the creative vein that we want it to happen in, right? Because some of the clientele we work with have their own marketing team that is kind of driving their marketing message to us, and others are small business that need us to take that kind of fractional CMO position as well.
Mhm.
So we're making creative decisions as well as far as their messaging and their branding and things like that. I'm coordinating all of that with our team, mostly through Slack and through email and digital. Because, like I said, most of my team is in Nicaragua. We do have 3 employees here local as well that that I'm responsible for. And then my partner, my wife Amy,
Mhm.
she is the face of this business and the strategist. So
Mhm.
she's she's sales, she's social media, she's the person that everybody sees. That's her about right there.
Yep.
Uh, um, but not just selling. She's very, very heavily involved in discovering what it is that our clients need and helping with that overall strategy, and then following up to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is always part of a business, right? You always
Yep.
want to have some accountability, because just caring for people is great, but if nobody's doing the tasks, then the business will still fail, because you got to get the work done. So
Yeah, there used to be on a slightly off topic note, but there's an interview question I heard of. Someone asked an investor, "Would you rather invest in a great company with a bad management team or a bad company with a great management team?" And the correct answer was neither, because you have to have both for it to be
you
a
got to have
success.
both. Yeah, it doesn't
Definitely,
exist otherwise.
definitely. To the other point you said, it's kind of a marriage, but a pun intended, since you guys are actually partners, but figuratively partners in business too, since you're the operations, she's the strategy. So really beautiful to see that happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fun relationship to navigate, because we're always doing a little bit of the pull back and forth as far as decision making and things like that, and finding our way to cohesiveness is it's actually really good for our marriage. Believe it or not, we have to work at it all the time, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I would so much rather be here and
Mhm.
us working together than running 2 separate businesses in 2 separate states. I mean, that's awful. So
You'd rather have combined chaos and growth than as opposed to doing your own things. Definitely.
yeah,
No,
we're exponential when we're together. So
yeah, awesome. That's great to hear. I'm sure Amy will will love to hear that on the recording as well. But awesome. So speaking of marketing, obviously you said you work in the operations, and as just mentioned, Amy works in the strategy. From your perspective, would love to know what you think business owners or when business owners need to know that they need a fresh new marketing start. I know reading through your bio a little bit, you said you dealt with poor marketers in the future. So how would you advise companies to know, one, when they need a great marketer, two, when their current marketers suck?
That's, I mean, those are great questions. That's a really big question to unpack. But the very first thing is every business needs to get their story straight.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them. Most of the businesses in the world don't know how to market that. They don't know how to talk about themselves, which is really all marketing is intentionally sharing your brand, sharing what you're about in a way that somebody else will receive it.
Mm-hmm.
But most businesses make the mistake of talking about themselves. My grandfather started this business 3 generations ago in 1920. Nobody cares. They eventually will care when they're your client, when they need more social proof. But right out of the gate, people need to get their story straight, and then they need to spread that story clearly across all of their channels. If you look at some of the big brands out there, uh, you don't get a different message from Coca-Cola on their Facebook and in person when one of their management goes to a meeting and on a billboard and all the different ways that they advertise. It's the same message, different medium, but they're very clear on their messaging, because if you're people are exposed to somewhere between 6 and 10,000 advertisements a day. You don't hear hardly any of them. It just goes right over your head, because we're made to filter out erroneous noise. It's in our DNA. Otherwise, we would be super excited about everything we put our eyes to. It's like, wow, that door is so black, or wow, that screen is so big. Everything would be that kind of big, right? So we filter everything out all the time. We're filtering out advertisements that don't seem to pertain to us. So if in the first couple of seconds you haven't clearly called out the problem and identified that problem in a unique individual, they're not going to listen to anything else you have to say. So the way that you position your messaging is super important. The other the secondary way that you could know if you need a new marketer is if they're not telling you that. I mean, if they're telling you that you should be doing anything other than being very consistent with your messaging, that's not the marketer for you.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting point. I actually spoke to another big marketing executive the other day, and he mentioned that the way you really, one, he mentioned consistent messaging, but two, he discussed that you really have to emotionally appeal to people, and because people make emotional decisions. So if you can have a consistent message, but a consistent emotional message, it seems like that would be the holy grail of how to really effectively market your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Here at Hite, we're the largest story brand certified agency in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know anything about story brand, I'm going to give just a shameless plug for Donald Miller. Go read
Oh,
anything he's got. The guy's absolutely amazing. I don't get any money for sharing his products with you.
mm-hmm.
But if you want a great understanding of how to market and how to run a business, this is the guy that can tell you in very, very plain English.
Mm-hmm.
The way, as people, we tell stories. We've been telling stories around campfires before we could write down words. And that's how we share concepts all the time. So when there's a very specific framework to tell a story that involves that emotional pain that somebody's dealing with, right? Because anytime somebody has a problem that you want to solve, they have a physical problem, like, I need a locksmith, my door won't unlock.
Mm-hmm.
They also have an emotional problem. They're frustrated because they can't get into their house or their car. And then they also have a philosophical problem. They don't deserve this. They woke up today and did everything right, and their keys are in the car and not out of it in their hand. When you can appeal to somebody on an emotional level, then they see themselves in your communication. They go, "Oh, that's me. They have a solution for my problem. They've clearly identified, so they know me." Somebody feels seen. If we don't feel seen as an individual, we don't want to do business with somebody.
Got it. So the big thing is really being able to connect with folks, and once you have that connection, that should be the main point, not the selling point. Focus on connecting before selling. I think maybe it might be the best way to summarize that.
Yes, instead of positioning yourself as the end all be all, you position yourself as a guide in their journey,
Mm-hmm.
and they win when they engage you in your services, because it's like Obi-Wan with Luke Skywalker. right?
Mhm.
Luke Skywalker's the hero. Obi-Wan's pretty good at what he does.
Yep.
He's his guide. He's teaching him. He's carrying him to a new place with his wisdom and knowledge and help. That's what marketers should be doing. Should being a guide to their clients and helping their clients win and magnify their message in a great way, so they get more clients.
Okay. Awesome. Sounds good. I think that was a great synopsis of it. Another
Perfect.
kind of topic to discuss in marketing, similar to what we touched on before, but I would love to know from your perspective, kind of running or operating a digital marketing agency. Pardon my English today. How do you think the best way is for a company to really differentiate their brand, but also make it personal?
Well, differentiating your brand, you have to identify whatever your unique selling proposition is. You
Mhm.
have to know why you're different. If you don't know, I can guarantee you your marketer's not going to figure that out. You
Mhm.
got to know why are you doing this? What makes you different in business? um, Really, if you can get your story straight, where you're magnifying the same message every time, you're going to stand out from most of your competition, because they're not doing that. They're
Mhm.
not even hitting that benchmark. uh, but number one, and this is my passion, is product.
Mhm.
uh, if you really want to stand out, get obsessive about product. It's never good enough. When you hit that level that you say is good enough, that's your new basement. And always be trying to improve whatever it is you're selling, whatever your widget is. If you can make it better, you can make it cheaper, you can make it add more value to somebody's life, do it. Most businesses spend a couple of months or a short amount of time working on their product, and a lot of time working on their sales process and their marketing and all of those things. But then they fight an uphill battle selling that stuff all the time. Uh, if you've got fantastic product, it
Mhm.
almost markets itself.
Mhm.
I mean, I have, I can't think of how many times I've ended up with something because somebody I knew was raving about that widget or whatever that thing was, and when it's amazing, it really does sell itself. So if you're fighting an uphill battle in growth, take a look at your product, at what you're selling. Is it really adding value, or are you trying to push something that could be better on someone?
It's an interesting point. I think it goes similar to what we were talking about earlier, really focusing on the value instead of money. And if people are more focused on the money, then they might, focus a little too much on kind of selling it and not actually kind of developing their product. And to another point, a lot of these big tech companies think, what's the acronym called? Kind of Facebook, Apple, like the FANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anyone to quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure a lot of them have consistently quarter to quarter really big research and development kind of costs, because it goes to show that even these big large players who have boatloads and boatloads of cash seem to be
Exactly.
investing every year into improving their product. So there's secrets right out there. Just it seems like a lot of people are more focused on the dollar than the value these days.
it's it's because people look at they're not looking at their time horizon in the same way that these companies are. Um, we talk about it all the time when we talk about governments. We talk about big corporations. They see generationally. They're looking for steady, sustained growth over multi generations.
Mhm.
Even within our own lives, if you have a long enough ramp, you'll get there. If you want to be a $1 million a year salesperson, and you're at a $0 a year salesperson today, if you give yourself enough
Mhm.
time and you put in the work, that's the thing. Time by itself is not enough, but time and effort, and the right effort combined over time, you'll get there. But everybody wants it today. They want it now. And some people get there, but it's usually the exception, and it usually doesn't last.
Got it.
Having a killer product that people can't live without. We are constantly trying to improve our advertising messaging. We're optimizing every ad account that I have running gets optimized weekly. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter how old it is, and we've got some that are several years old that are still running, and we still optimize them. Why? Isn't it set it and forget it? No, you're always trying to get better.
Got it. No, great to hear. Always great to hear also practicing what you preach. And the other question I wanted to ask, so for a lot of those people that you mentioned that want it today are really short-sighted, is there anything that you'd recommend to them other than, just look long view, or any way to condition them to think more long term instead of being really focused on the short?
I think a couple of things. One is if they're attempting something hard, if they're trying to do something they haven't done before, they have to have grace for themselves. I'm a big fan of, I call it the 80-20 rule, where you can give 80% and 20% of the time maybe you're not doing your best. The business community is more like the rule of thirds, where a third of the time you're going to feel great, a third of the time you're going to feel okay, and a third of the time you're going to feel like everything's falling apart. But if you're doing something hard, don't quit when you fail. Don't quit when it gets hard, because you might be just right on the other side of a breakthrough. And even if you fall flat on your face, you're going to learn. I know really the best thing that you can do is not focus on money as the end result. That's a factor, not every factor, but yeah.
I think that was a great way of looking at it. I think a lot of times it sounds so simple, just don't quit, keep going. But not to get into a complete tangent, but I think especially with social media, a lot of times people are like, oh, like big house, big boat, like I want this today, I want this today. One, obviously, people shouldn't believe everything that they see on social media. I
No.
probably, if I didn't have to use it to promote this podcast, I probably wouldn't be on social media at all. But it's a
Mm-hmm.
evil these days. But the other thing is, I think a lot of people, if social media wasn't around, or if they were a little more disciplined to themselves, and instead of maybe looking at other things, really thought about how much they could improve. One, they would realize how much time they were wasting, with their prior mindset, and two, they would realize how much they have to work on, or how much they have to grow. So it's something I'm not perfect with, definitely working on.
I
But
don't think any of us are. Yeah,
okay,
I'm quite a bit older than you are. Either that or you age really well.
I
Uh,
appreciate it.
and still to this day, nobody hits it perfect.
Mhm,
But the more you can kind of um, don't buy into those fluff lies.
mhm.
Yes, on your social media, you're going to see the guy that's in the private jet in front of the Lambo, and he just he started 18 months ago, and by golly, he hit his $1 million run rate in 3 months, and he's just nailing it, and just come make this cash. And it's not true. Even if it's true for that guy, that one guy, it's not true. That's not how it works. Not long term. It's not sustainable. So definitely don't buy into the lie. That's media's been doing that to us for a long time. I mean, you look at a beer commercial from the 70s. Did you see anybody frowning? No, everybody was smiling and happy, and it was wonderful. Does beer make everybody feel wonderful? No, it's not how it works. And same thing in business. Is it got to have a longer time horizon, and you have to be testing. That's the thing, is you have to do self-evaluation on a regular basis. Am I better? Am I further along than where I was, whatever that time frame is, last month, last 6 months, 1 year ago? Am I closer to my goal, or am I further away? If you're further away from your goal, then the activities that you're doing are not going to carry you closer. They've already carried you further away. So you may need to pivot your activities at that point. But if you're closer to your goal and you're just not there yet, definitely just keep going, because what you're doing is moving the goalpost, right?
Yep.
So I think to answer your question, that self-evaluation on a regular basis and doing that objectively, trying to take your feelings about how things have gone and looking at empirical data, lets you know whether you're getting closer to your goal or not.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a beautiful way of looking at it. I think people overcomplicate it necessarily these days, but hopefully we can all think a little more simply and work on ourselves. But really appreciate that. And now to get back to kind of more of the fun marketing stuff, I hope
Yeah.
people appreciate our little tangent there. But obviously appreciate you speaking to kind of some of the operational aspects, always improving, to a little more of the current events. Are there any emerging trends that you think kind of new businesses should be aware of, or other marketers should be aware of, to take advantage of and help grow their businesses in the future?
It's been big news lately, but AI really is changing the landscape, especially in the digital market. But anything creative right now, um, image creation using Midjourney is ridiculous. You're seeing ads right now of pictures of things that don't exist. They're already out there on the web. They're fantastic. They're top quality. that's if you're not utilizing AI in your business in any way that you can, you're gonna get left behind by your competitors. So in a digital space, um, Chat GPT is constantly evolving. They're coming out with new functionalities with it and plugins and things that make it more friendly. It's not just coming up with text now. It's doing a lot of our jobs
Mm-hmm.
for us, and we're kind of driving that boat. So that's one trend. We want to always keep our eye on new social media platforms that pop up and see what they do. I mean, like Threads, that's an interesting one. It kind of came out running and has kind of popped down, but they're not monetizing it yet. So let's or if they are, I haven't been on there in a couple of days. They haven't started doing anything. But these new platforms, as kind of the established big boys start to have trouble, advertising in some of these new platforms is a really good place to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's not a fun one,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a big trend over this year and next year that's going to make it much harder to attribute where a customer is coming from in the
Mm-hmm.
digital arena. But Google Google is putting a quash on a lot of the little tracking
The cookies.
software and things like that. Cookies. I was going to say UTMs, and it's like half people are going to know what that is. Um, but yeah, people are getting more concerned with their privacy and not being followed around by the advertising watchdog, so to speak. And because of that, attribution is going to be a lot harder. So it's going to be important for businesses to be multi-pronged where their clients are, not just invested in one platform, because they're not going to be able to know whether all their clients are going to come through one avenue. Somebody might go through a website to a Facebook post to a Twitter post and end up through 3 or 4 links and then end up buying your widget. You don't know where they came from. So it's getting harder and harder with privacy laws.
Yeah, definitely. And to one of the things you just said earlier, you said Threads isn't monetizing yet. Maybe when Musk and Zuckerberg have their little rendezvous, maybe that'll be the first
That
monetization event. But no, definitely will be interesting to see there. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm sure you've heard of this, apologies if you haven't, but there was a kind of the big Instagram model who was totally AI generated, and apparently it's generating over $10 million a
No, I
year.
haven't seen her yet.
Yeah,
Uh-uh.
I don't know the exact company there is, but kind of afterward, if you want to do a quick Google search, a company created,
Absolutely.
I guess, what people expect the most aesthetic looking individual to look like, and then somehow this person got a bunch of brand deals, and turns out it's just completely AI generated. So that just tells you how folks think. I mean, I guess that stuff sells, but it's interesting that it's not a real person at the end of the day.
I have those. I have conversations with people that are across the entire spectrum. Of course, that's been the big conversation with AI, and it's everything from I tried it once and it wouldn't do anything, so it's absolutely useless, to it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Mhm.
It's somewhere in the middle, but
Yep.
it is definitely changing the landscape, and it's changing it faster than we can keep up right now. Like that wasn't we didn't have that capability 18 months ago,
For
2
sure.
years ago. That's lightning speed. So where are we going to be in 2 more years as all these companies are working on using AI in new and innovative ways?
Mhm. Got it. It'll be definitely interesting to see how that affects just business in general, and especially the
Be an
future.
AI dating app at some point.
Yeah. Not the AIs together. It's not even
Yeah,
going to
you
be.
don't go. Yeah, the whole match process is programming. Is you just feeding the AI until it feeds you your perfect partner.
Got it. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But I appreciate the insight around that. Another side regarding marketing, a little more specifically, but you definitely have familiarity with a lot of these different marketing methods. Telemarketing, ads, email marketing. From your perspective, would love to know which one of those, if not, you could easily say the answer depends, but we'd love to know what you think has the best marketing ROI for business.
It does depend, but it depends upon the goal.
Mhm.
Um, like in home services, uh, home services companies that are just running Google ads are much less effective than a home services company that runs Google ads and also has a postcard blitz company working for them. So they can multiply jobs, one lead into multiple leads, in the physical realm. That's where companies are winning, is when they're kind of stacking their marketing on top of one another.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, roofing company picks up a lead, goes out and does an inspection on one home. In the past, they would just stick a yard sign. We're going to be here and doing this job. So the 2 or 3 neighbors around would see the sign, and maybe they'd pick up another job because the neighbor might need a roof too, right? Well, with like targeted postcards, that's one that not a lot of people are making waves with, and it's kind of a gold mine right now, because there are companies out there like Dope Marketing is one of them. There's a couple of others that can do extremely targeted postcards for very small cost, with automation. So they can tie that in to a roofer's CRM. A roofer goes out and plugs into a CRM that he gave a quote. It sends out postcards to the 12 or 25 houses around him that say, hey, we're going to be doing a roof in your area. If anything blows in your yard, give us a call. Yep. Send them another postcard another week. So postcards became kind of a hard one to make money with the post office. Became very expensive because you were hitting whole zip codes, big areas. So being able to get really hyper focused with that is excellent. Believe it or it really depends on what somebody's selling, because there are certain industries, radio is still a great place to be, and it's so inexpensive because they're starving. Radio stations are almost giving away spots right now, especially some of the smaller stations in areas. Getting hyper local, at least for small business, getting really focused on multi-channels in your small area is a way that you can do it really effectively. You don't have to go for just the traditional routes of a PPC ad and a Facebook ad. And well, if that doesn't work, I guess we weren't doing well enough, right? So.
Got it. So it sounds like tangibly kind of postcards seem to be a hot spot right now, but ultimately it really depends on what works. So a company could try a few different things. If they find one thing that works, instead of trying to spread the marketing functions or spread the different marketing methods, really try to hammer down and build upon that one. Does that sound right?
Yeah, the number one, the one caveat with that is, you always, if ever possible, want to be able to collect data. Because you want to know if your marketing's working. So if you're running a billboard, you don't put your telephone number on the billboard. You put a tracking telephone number on the billboard. Yep. So somebody called you from that billboard. Whatever marketing channel you're using should always have something built in so you can get back data and know whether it was worth it. That's my best piece of advice. And yes, when you try, when companies try, don't dabble. If you're going to try, invest 3 to 6 months into that avenue to get it to work. For example, a Google PPC ad campaign, people don't understand, it's in a learning phase for the first, realistically, is 90 days. There's a couple of campaign types, it's 45 days, but realistically 90 days. So you run ads for 90 days, you're getting leads, it's learning, and then day 91 becomes day 1 again. It now has all that data. We've taught it to know what clients we want it to bring to us and how to bring them to us. But a lot of companies, they don't get to that 90-day mark because they're like, I've got enough money for 1 month of Google ads. And they might get some clients, but they don't kind of hit that profitability mark they need to hit yet, because it's still learning. And the second is budget. I mean, if you're, I can't tell you how many times I have the conversation. This is my last. If this last $1,000 doesn't get me there, I'm gonna have to close my company. I've had that conversation several times with potential clients, and I have to turn them away and say, if that's the case, you don't have enough money to sustain this until it starts coming back to you. So we're back to that longer time frame again, right? Where dollar in, dollar out is not how advertising works anymore.
Got it. Okay, awesome. So really only do it if you have the money to really invest in it. If you have a short cash flow, maybe try to look internally, think of best ways to grow, but don't.
There's lots of things I can give advice on what to do if money's funny. If you don't have enough money, you have 2 feet, you have 2 hands, you got 1 mouth. You can make phone calls, you can send emails, You can go to networking meetings. If what you're selling, you can sell local. I mean, there's lots you can do to hustle. I wouldn't start just dumping money into any advertising if you don't have it.
Got it.
It's not going to save you. So
I think
it is always a risk.
No, I think that's great advice too. It's because a lot of people, especially with marketing, and similar to what we were saying before, sometimes may want something right away. But I think it's honestly really prudent of you because a lot of we'll call them predatory marketing agents or kind of independent folks are just going to look for the money right away, and even though they'll might make it, they're not going to really add value. So honestly, I really
Mm-hmm.
commend you for being able to tell folks like, look, like if you only have $1,000, we want to be really transparent. I don't think it's the best partnership for both of us. We don't want to be predatory, and we
Yeah.
know kind of if you do this relationship with us, it'll take a while for it to work out, and we want you to do what's best for your business, and this may not be the best thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great way, and it's a high character. So way to go, Joe, on that. But awesome. A few other things I wanted to get into, and we touched upon it earlier, but I know you discussed earlier that you're in business with your wife. Would love to know how that is, kind of if you could speak a little more to that, and how you're able to navigate that just through your relationship and business in general.
Absolutely. So to tell a little bit about the history of us starting to work together, when I left the oil field and shut down my consulting company, I came back and I took a few months off. I felt like I earned it. I don't know that I did, but I kind of laid around and got fat
Mhm.
for a little while.
Great, don't worry.
And then when we started kind of full time, shoulder to shoulder working together, uh, our roles were completely reversed. I've 25 years in business for myself. I considered myself this great salesman. I was just awesome. I wasn't awesome. Just wasn't. And the reason I wasn't is because I'll run this mouth all the time and think I've got all the solutions very quickly in a sales conversation with somebody, and that's not sales. Sales happens here.
Mhm.
It happens here in analyzing, finding the pain, uncovering the pain points of somebody, uh, and then genuinely, appropriately uh, offering the solution for those pain points.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think most of the time in my sales conversations, I wouldn't peel far enough. I'd get to the
Mhm.
first layer of pain point. That really wasn't what they were trying to solve. So she's a much better listener than I am. But it took us, oh gosh, it took us a solid year to figure that out. We really kind of struggled with that because she's a very detail oriented person.
Mhm.
And she was running our team and she was doing a great job with it, but it was causing a lot of stress.
Mhm.
Um, and what we found is that my paint contracting experience, running all the crews that I've run, was um, it was part and parcel. It was the exact same skill set I needed for project management for our multiple clientele. So as we've grown, I've been able to grow with that in that role in the
Mhm.
management side of things. But uh, it it's always a learning process every day. And I'm sorry, I'm a mover. If you see, I just
All good, all good.
all over the place all the
No
time.
worries.
Just realized I'm just sliding back and forth. Uh, it's it's work every day that I would rather not do anything else. I love working on our marriage and our business together at the same time. Um, we have to um, we have to be intentional about spending time together that isn't work.
Mhm.
That's probably the hardest part about this because we work together. We're building a business. We're in growth mode right now, where we're hammering to grow, um, and it's easy to miss out on the things that
Personal.
are really important. Like tomorrow, instead of spending our Saturday, pounding away on the keyboards in the office, which does happen a lot. We're taking our grandkids and we're going to the Watermelon Festival in Rush
Awesome.
Springs, Oklahoma.
Sounds like anyone's creative, but it sounds like a great cause.
Yes, it's gonna be a great time, and work won't happen at
Mhm.
all. And coming to that realization together that's been something that evolved over time, because we're both extremely driven people, and I know, and she now knows what it takes to actually grow a business. It's not a 40-hour a week toe in the water endeavor. It's a slog. Everything worth having is uphill. So you're gonna push that rock up there the whole time.
Yep, for sure. I mean, obviously, I'm in the early stages of this, and to those listeners, this is actually only my second episode, so I'm sure everyone will will realize that. But even in the background, I know I have a lot to go until kind of I'm where you're at, but it seems like less of a day job and more like a lifestyle in the sense that people think starting something is this great, awesome endeavor, and life is going to be fantastic, and it's a great journey. Don't get me wrong, but once you realize doing it, you realize that the to do list goes like this, and then
Yes.
something takes instead of 2 hours will take you 2 days, or it's always just kind of rolling with the punches if there's anything I've learned in the first few weeks of doing this thing.
Yeah, there's always way more effort to any endeavor than you can imagine when you first start dip your toe in that water. Uh, Marketing is no different.
Mm-hmm.
It is extremely exciting. It's a lot of fun. We get to tell stories of our clients in creative ways, and I'm a little off kilter. The stuff I like to come up with really gets people's attention. It's fun and it's funny, but it's also work.
Mm-hmm.
It is. There's the idea of the laptop lifestyle. Um, it's attractive. It
Mm-hmm.
is. Uh, the laptop part is the part everybody misses, is that's where the work's happening. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to be buried in that. You could do it with your toes in the water on a beach, but your feet are going to get wet, not your keyboard. You're going to be working. That if you want to build something sustained, you are going to have to put in effort. It may be short time, it may be a longer time. Depends on your early successes and how quickly you're learning from your mistakes. That's always the big one. People don't ever build in their ability to fail.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to congratulate yourself when you attempt something and you fail and you learned and you go back to attempt again. But you also have to build that into your workflow, into your time schedule. And we're not very good planners as people with that. We expect to succeed 100% of the time. Most of us do. And that's just not the case.
Yep. No, I think it's also a great way of looking at it. People may often overlook their ability or capacity to take into account and understand their own failures. So I think if before people go into this endeavor, they have that mindset, maybe it'll save them a lot of time and a lot of depression and unnecessary time moving forward, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Awesome. So a few other things I wanted to get into, and something you kind of touched upon with actually what you're doing tomorrow regarding the Watermelon Festival. So starting these paint companies, then I'm sure you have your hands full building out this marketing company right now. How do you find balance in your life, or how do you go about that?
Okay, this is going to be might be a little bit controversial, but I
Oh,
don't believe there truly is a balance.
yeah.
I think that you have one life and you get to choose what to do with it every day. You wake up in the morning and you get to choose violence, you get to choose peace, you get to choose to be a sloth, or you get to be active. You get all that stuff, right? Um, and I think every day you have to choose what's most important on that day. So I you write it down and then schedule it. I actually live and die by my calendar. So when family time goes on the calendar, it has to, because otherwise everything else will bleed in.
Mhm.
But especially in an entrepreneurial business ownership place, I don't think you don't get to separate the two. If you're at work, and I mean, you're doing family stuff. You're
Mhm.
caring for your family. You're generating money. You're doing all those things. So you can't just avoid that and go sit with your family. If you avoid your family and just go sit at work all the time, you won't have a family. What we do, uh, we office from home, and our employees are remote, our local employees. That way we can spend time with our children. They come home from school and we're working and running our business, and they're here. So if I need to stop and get up and let out the dogs and have a conversation with my 15-year-old, I'm right here to do it. It's one cohesive life. And then try to involve what you consider your personal life into your work life as well. They're all integrated for me. So I know for some folks that's something they can't do, but um, I don't know. I think I had to learn that being the breadwinner when I was a younger man running my paint contracting companies wasn't enough. I also had to be I had to be present with my family. Obviously, I care a lot about presence. I've shut down a very lucrative company just to come back here and be a marketer. So uh, I don't think that you get there. I think if you're focused so hard on having that balance, it's like having a marriage that you want to be 50-50. There are seasons to everything. Your marriage is never 50-50. That's not a real marriage. Marriage is 100-100. Marriage is I'm giving everything I can when I can. Sometimes what I have to give is a crisp high five and I'll leave you alone so I don't hurt your feelings because I'm in a terrible mood. And sometimes my 100 is I carry the whole household because today's the day my wife can't. So, that's marriage. Well, that's life too. You have seasons where we're building a business right now. Some weeks we got to go on vacation. So, I mean, obviously we don't work 90 hours a week every week, 52 weeks a year, but sometimes we have to put in that time. We have to sacrifice temporarily other things. But it's when that becomes permanent and becomes your existence and you're not working on the relationships in your life that things start to suffer.
No, definitely very interesting. There's actually a book written by who's known as one of the best networkers in the world, Keith Ferrazzi, I believe his name is. It's called Never Eat Alone, and I think the last chapter, the second to last chapter, one of those, the title of the chapter is "Balance is BS," and he just basically describes how his schedule is basically every day waking up at 4 a.m., connecting people, working with clients, then doing that the next day all over again. And his point was, isn't that you shouldn't have time for the personal part of it, but when you're really trying to do something in corporate America, even, or just growing something in general, if you try to draw lines in the sand regarding what's work, what's life, it's not always going to work. In a weird way, if you just accept what's happening and just kind of roll with the punches, it seems like accepting chaos is the best way to avoid chaos. As weird as that says, as weird as
Yeah,
that's.
definitely. Yeah, it makes my life much more vibrant to not try to draw those lines in the sand. If When I was younger and I tried to draw them in the sand, it was all conflict, and
Mhm.
both work and family suffered
Mhm.
because when I was with my family, it was we were resentful of work, and when I was at work, is now I was resentful of my family, and vice versa. It's not healthy. So
Yep.
um,
One
yeah,
giant.
the balance is in taking care of you. That's one that's important. I think uh, taking the time to meditate,
Mhm.
exercise, get plenty of rest, eat well. Uh, that allows you to go through those seasons of really heavy activity, heavy chaos, so to speak. That you do got to take care of you.
Mhm.
Start there. If you can do that, you can find some semblance of balance in your life for certain.
Mhm. Got it. No, for sure. It's an interesting way of approaching it in the sense that obviously you want to do a great job at work, but do a good job. But the more you let go and the more you just kind of accept life is going to be a little chaotic, the more things seem to work out. So it's an
Exactly.
interesting point. But awesome. And last thing I wanted to ask, it'll be up to you to think if this is the most complicated or the most simple. But in your life and in your business, how do you find happiness?
In the moment,
Hmm.
always in the moment. It's happiness. Happiness feels situational all the time. So I lean more towards finding contentment and joy
Hmm.
because that's more sustainable. They're not dependent upon the highs and the lows.
Hmm.
When I'm down, I'm not happy. I'm not happy when if an account's having problems, or if I'm having conflict with one of my family members, or if a team member hasn't followed through with something they needed to do on time. I'm unhappy. So that's very very situational.
Hmm.
Um, but I think you can find contentment and joy in every situation if you can step back and look at it from a little bit more of a 30,000-foot view.
Hmm.
Not easy to do. It's never easy to do in the moment. Um, by uh, by drawing back and looking at your life as a series of ups and downs and this kind of weird waveform, you start to see that it's all your life and that you can be joyful and thankful for what you have as a whole or or whatnot. Um, it takes some of the power out of the moment, out of the situation. I think I adhere to that more to not focus on unhappiness more than it is to focus on happiness. I'm just kind of generally a happy person,
Hmm.
because uh, I get to make my life what I want it to be.
Hmm.
That's up to me. If I want a life where I travel more and that's going to cost more money, I know that I have the ability to do something about that. It's my responsibility to make sure that my marriage is healthy and that my relationship with my children are healthy, and having that power, having that responsibility is something that makes me very happy. But because I think we get unhappy when we feel things are being done to us out of our control. Um, and I don't know a person that really likes that. You end up pretty unhappy pretty quick.
Yep.
So
Stuff happens. Roll with the punches, and try to enjoy it as much as you can. But Joseph, really,
yeah,
really appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on the Business Blumin podcast. It seems like you've lived. One, it seems like you're a great person from our conversation, but it seems like you've lived a really nifty life from the hoodlum stages to the painting stages to the marketing stages, and I'm sure people have a lot to learn from your story. And wish you the best, and really appreciate your time.
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Sure.